The station called Helios Ring floated quietly between stars, a massive circle of metal and light, where dozens of alien species worked side by side. It was one of the first places where humanity was allowed to exist beyond its own solar space. To most of the galaxy, humans were not impressive. They were small, soft, and short-lived. They lacked natural armor, claws, venom, or psychic strength. They were allowed on Helios Ring only because the Galactic Coalition believed in controlled inclusion of weak civilizations. Ethan Hale arrived on the station without ceremony. No welcoming group waited for him. No alien official gave a speech. His name appeared briefly on a data slate, then disappeared under more important matters. He was assigned to Systems Maintenance Level 7, a place few species wanted to work. The systems there were old, patched together from many civilizations, and required constant attention. Ethan did not complain. He never did. He walked through the long, curved corridors, carrying a small tool case that looked almost primitive compared to the advanced devices others used. His human eyes scanned walls, floors, and lights. He noticed small things. A flicker that lasted half a second too long. A vibration that did not match station rhythm. A heat vent that released air slightly off schedule. Most aliens walked past such things. Their technology handled problems automatically, or so they believed. From a high observation balcony, Lyra watched. Lyra belonged to the Violari, a species known across the Coalition for their observers. They studied young civilizations, not by force, but by watching how individuals behaved when no one important was looking. Lyra was young by her people's standards, assigned to Helios Ring to observe daily interactions and report anything unusual. She had read the human profile before arriving. It described humans as emotionally volatile, cooperative but inefficient, brave but reckless. The files said humans relied too much on instinct and too little on logic. Lyra expected chaos. Instead, she saw Ethan. At first, she almost ignored him. He was just another human, wearing a simple maintenance uniform, moving quietly through corridors filled with taller, more complex beings. But something about his movement caught her attention. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He adjusted his pace naturally around others, as if calculating paths without thinking. Lyra activated her visual focus and followed him for several minutes. Ethan stopped near an access panel. The system displayed green status indicators. No alarms. No warnings. Any other worker would have walked on. Ethan knelt down. He placed his hand on the panel, feeling vibration through the metal. Then he opened it using a manual tool. Inside, energy conduits pulsed softly. One of them vibrated just slightly out of sync. Ethan frowned, adjusted a stabilizer by a few degrees, and closed the panel. The vibration stopped. Lyra blinked. The station logs showed no recorded issue. According to data, nothing had been wrong. She marked a small note in her observer log. Human technician performed unrequested adjustment. Result: improved system stability. It was insignificant. Or so she thought. Over the next few cycles, Lyra noticed a pattern. Wherever Ethan worked, minor issues disappeared before they became problems. Temperature fluctuations stabilized. Power flow smoothed. Communication lag vanished in small sectors. None of it triggered alarms. None of it appeared in official reports. Ethan never told anyone. When alien supervisors passed him, they barely acknowledged his presence. Some didn't know his name. To them, he was a background organism, useful only for basic labor. One cycle, a senior Carthian engineer snapped at Ethan when a diagnostics console froze. The Carthian was tall, plated in dark, armor-like skin, his voice sharp with irritation. "This unit was stable before your species interfered," the Carthian said. Ethan listened calmly. He did not argue. He studied the frozen screen, then asked a simple question. When was the last manual recalibration? The Carthian hesitated. His species relied almost entirely on automated systems. Ethan reached out, restarted a secondary subroutine, and adjusted a parameter the alien had never considered touching. The console came back online instantly. The Carthian said nothing more. Lyra felt something shift inside her. Her species valued logic above all else. Yet what she was seeing was not illogical. It was different. Ethan did not rely on superior technology. He relied on understanding systems at a fundamental level. He did not assume perfection. He assumed failure was always possible. That assumption was rare in the galaxy. Ethan finished his shift and walked toward the human quarters, a modest section of the station far from command decks and research halls. As he passed through a transit corridor, the lights flickered again, this time more noticeably. An alarm did not sound, but Ethan stopped. He looked up. A moment later, a power conduit overheated and shut down automatically. The corridor dimmed. Several aliens froze in confusion, waiting for instructions or system recovery. Ethan moved. He guided others calmly to the side, opened an emergency panel, and rerouted auxiliary power manually. The lights returned within seconds. By the time station control acknowledged the minor outage, it was already resolved. No report mentioned Ethan's name. Lyra watched everything. Her observer instincts told her this was not coincidence. Humans were supposed to react late, emotionally, inefficiently. Ethan reacted early, calmly, effectively. She ran simulations based on his behavior. The results did not match human classification data. According to her models, a species that behaved this way under low-level stress would perform far better under extreme conditions than expected. That possibility unsettled her. That cycle, Lyra sat alone in her observation chamber, surrounded by softly glowing data streams. She reviewed hours of footage, isolating Ethan's movements, his decisions, his timing. He never looked heroic. He never sought attention. He blended in so completely that most beings forgot he existed. And yet, systems worked better when he was present. Lyra opened a private log channel, restricted to her personal access. Such logs were optional, used only when an observer felt something did not fit official doctrine. She hesitated before recording. Then she spoke softly. The human designated Ethan Hale demonstrates adaptive behavior inconsistent with coalition assessment. Subject identifies potential failure points without relying on automated warnings. Emotional response remains stable under pressure. Motivation appears internal, not status-based. She paused, then added something she had never written before. Subject may represent an overlooked variable. Elsewhere on the station, Ethan sat on his narrow bunk, removing his work gloves. His hands were scratched and marked, but steady. He thought about his tasks for the next cycle, mentally planning routes and checks. He did not know he was being watched. He did not know data about him was being analyzed by a being from a species older than humanity's recorded history. He only knew the station felt a little safer when things worked the way they should. As Helios Ring continued its slow orbit through the stars, Lyra looked out at the endless darkness beyond the transparent hull. Her people believed the galaxy could be understood through observation alone. For the first time, she wondered if watching would be enough. Far below her chamber, a human technician turned off his light and rested, unaware that he had already begun changing how the galaxy saw his kind, one unnoticed action at a time. The next cycle on Helios Ring began like many before it, calm on the surface and quietly unstable beneath. Trade ships arrived and departed. Research teams argued over data. Command officers trusted their systems to handle the details. And deep within the station's layered structure, Ethan Hale walked his usual route, tool case in hand, eyes alert. He felt it before he saw it. A faint hum ran through the floor, slightly faster than normal. To most species, it meant nothing. To Ethan, it meant stress in the power distribution ring. He paused, pressed his boot against the metal plating, and listened. The sound was wrong, not loud enough to trigger alerts, but wrong enough to matter. He changed direction. Lyra noticed immediately. She had adjusted her observation routines to include predictive tracking. Instead of following schedules, she followed behavior. When Ethan altered his path, her system flagged it. She watched from a distance as he entered a secondary maintenance corridor, rarely used by senior engineers. Inside, a cluster of energy nodes pulsed unevenly. The station's automated intelligence had compensated, but only barely. Ethan studied the readouts, then shook his head. "This won't last," he muttered, speaking to himself. He worked quickly but carefully, adjusting load balances, reinforcing a manual bypass, and rerouting stress away from a single overworked conduit. His changes were small, but they created flexibility, something rigid systems lacked. When he finished, the hum faded. Lyra felt a strange tension ease, even though no alarm had ever sounded. Across the station, other problems began to surface. A research lab reported minor data corruption. A docking bay experienced a brief gravity fluctuation. A communications relay lagged for 2 seconds longer than expected. Each issue alone was insignificant. Together, they formed a pattern. Lyra saw it clearly. She overlaid system maps, timestamps, and maintenance records. The pattern pointed toward a slow-growing instability. One, the station's predictive models had not prioritized because the risk curve was too gradual. Humans, according to coalition data, were poor at long-term prediction. Ethan was proving the opposite. Lyra adjusted her observation angle again, focusing on how others treated him. Most aliens spoke over him, not to him. Some ignored him completely. When he offered suggestions, they were often dismissed politely or not acknowledged at all. One incident stood out. A meeting of mid-level engineers gathered near a failing environmental regulator. The alien lead explained the issue in complex terms, citing advanced equations and high-level diagnostics. The system still failed to respond. Ethan waited. When the alien paused in frustration, Ethan spoke quietly. "The regulator isn't broken," he said. "It's confused." Several beings turned toward him, surprised he had spoken at all. "It's receiving 2 commands at once," Ethan continued. "One from the station core, one from a legacy subsystem. They don't agree." The lead engineer frowned. "The system would have resolved that automatically." "It tried," Ethan replied. "It keeps choosing the safer option." "But the safer option is wrong for this environment." Silence followed. Reluctantly, the alien allowed Ethan to demonstrate. He disabled one command stream, adjusted the other, and the regulator stabilized instantly. The problem vanished. No one thanked him. The meeting moved on. Lyra's observer instincts sharpened. This was no accident. Ethan's value was not in raw intelligence or physical power. It was in perspective. He expected systems to fail, to contradict themselves, to behave imperfectly. He did not trust automation blindly. He worked with it, challenged it. That mindset was rare. Later that cycle, Lyra requested access to deeper human behavioral archives. Her species rarely bothered with such details, but curiosity overrode tradition. She learned about human engineers working with unreliable machinery, about improvisation during crises, about cultures built around problem-solving under pressure. Humans did not assume stability. They survived without it. As Ethan completed his shift, a low-level warning flickered briefly on a command display far above him. It vanished too quickly to alert anyone. But Lyra saw it. Her internal processes accelerated. The station's core systems were slowly drifting out of alignment due to accumulated micro-adjustments made over decades by different species. Each fix assumed the last one was perfect. It wasn't. Ethan had been quietly correcting these assumptions, one small change at a time. Lyra faced a dilemma. Her role was observation, not involvement. But what she was seeing suggested a larger risk. If the instability reached a threshold, the station's systems might fail in ways no one predicted. She watched Ethan one last time before making a decision. He sat alone in the human commons, eating a simple meal, reviewing maintenance notes on a small screen. His expression was tired but focused. He did not look like someone preparing to save anything. He looked like someone doing his job. Lyra opened a restricted channel and recorded another private log. The human continues to mitigate system instability without recognition. Other species rely excessively on automation and hierarchy. Human subject demonstrates independent judgment and anticipatory action. Coalition risk models may be incomplete. She paused, then added quietly, "I will continue observation at elevated priority." The next cycle began with a failure no one expected. A transport vessel docking at Helios Ring experienced a sudden synchronization error. Docking clamps engaged half a second too early. The ship jolted, alarms sounding briefly before stabilizing. Official reports labeled it a minor incident. Ethan read the report and frowned. "That shouldn't have happened," he said softly. He traced the error back through system logs, following threads others ignored. The error pointed toward the station's central timing array, a system so trusted that few ever questioned it. Ethan requested access for inspection. The request was denied. Lyra saw the denial. Her tension grew. Ethan did not argue. He simply adjusted his schedule and continued monitoring peripheral systems. Gathering evidence quietly, he logged anomalies, cross-referenced data, and built a mental map of a problem larger than any single system. He was preparing. Lyra realized then that watching was no longer passive. She was witnessing the early stages of human response to a threat others could not yet see. As the station moved through the darkness between stars, unseen stresses continued to build. The Galactic Coalition believed Helios Ring was safe, stable, and controlled. One human knew better, and one alien observer understood that the galaxy had made a mistake not in trusting its technology, but in underestimating the quiet species that never assumed perfection in the first place. The first real failure came without warning. On Helios Ring, the artificial night cycle had just begun. Lights dimmed across civilian sectors, and traffic slowed. Most species rested according to their own rhythms, trusting the station to remain stable, as it always had. Deep within the station's core layers, something slipped out of alignment. Ethan felt it while checking a coolant junction. The air grew slightly warmer, not enough to trigger alarms, not enough for most species to notice. But Ethan noticed, because the change was wrong. Too fast. Too uneven. He straightened and looked at his wrist display. Several systems showed green status, yet the coolant flow pattern made no sense. It was as if the station was breathing unevenly. "This is bad," he whispered. He opened a manual channel and sent a low-priority notice to systems control, describing what he was seeing. The response came back minutes later. "Automated systems stable. No action required." Ethan exhaled slowly. He had expected that answer. Above him, in her observation chamber, Lyra was already watching alerts ripple through secondary data layers. Minor inconsistencies were multiplying. Timestamps drifted by fractions of a second. Power loads shifted without clear cause. The station's predictive intelligence adjusted again and again, each fix stacking on the last. Lyra ran a projection. The result made her still. If the drift continued, Helios Ring would experience a cascading synchronization failure within 2 cycles. Gravity, power, and navigation systems would fall out of alignment not catastrophically at first, but enough to cause chaos. She compared the projection with coalition threat models. The models showed nothing. Lyra's species had always trusted data, but now the data was incomplete. Ethan moved fast. He rerouted coolant manually, reducing heat in one sector while increasing flow in another. It was a temporary fix, buying time. He logged everything, building a chain of cause and effect. As he worked, a tremor ran through the station. Very small, barely felt. Then another. This time, alarms sounded localized and brief. Command dismissed them as docking stress from a recent arrival. But Ethan knew better. The timing array was slipping. He requested access again. Again, denied. "You don't have clearance for core systems," the response said. "Stand down." Ethan clenched his jaw. He wasn't angry. He was focused. He knew something others didn't. Complex systems rarely failed all at once. They failed in small, connected ways. And once the wrong threshold was crossed, no amount of advanced technology could react fast enough. Lyra watched him reroute yet another subsystem, preventing a pressure spike that would have damaged a habitat ring. She saw how close the station already was to instability. For the first time in her career, she considered intervention. Her people forbade direct action. Observers were not meant to change outcomes, only record them. But Lyra also knew that rules were designed for predictable situations. This was not one. She opened a secure communication channel, one used only for internal station diagnostics. With careful precision, she altered access priorities just enough. Ethan's display blinked. Core timing array access granted. He froze for half a second, surprised. Then, he didn't question it. He ran. The core systems chamber lay deep within the station, surrounded by layers of security and automation. Ethan entered. Heart steady. Mind racing. Data streams flooded his screen, confirming his fears. The timing array was no longer synchronized with several major subsystems. Automated corrections were making it worse. Ethan shut down autocorrection. Across the station, control officers panicked as alerts flared. What is happening? Who authorized this? Restore automation immediately. Ethan ignored the voices flooding his comm. He worked manually, aligning the timing signals step by step, prioritizing life support and gravity over non-essential systems. Lyra watched command decks erupt into confusion. Advanced species shouted orders, relying on protocols that assumed automation was supreme. Ethan assumed nothing. A power surge hit. The station shuddered hard enough for everyone to feel it now. Artificial gravity flickered. Lights went out in several sectors. Panic spread. Ethan braced himself and kept working. This is the threshold, he said aloud. If I miss this, it all falls apart. Lyra's heart raced, a rare experience for her kind. She monitored stress indicators across the station. Structural limits were approaching danger zones. She broke another rule. She opened a direct channel to Ethan. Human, she said, her voice steady but urgent. Your actions are preventing collapse. Continue. You have limited time. Ethan blinked at the unfamiliar voice. Who is this? There is no time, Lyra replied. The station is drifting toward a synchronization failure. Your method is correct. Ethan nodded once. He didn't ask how she knew. He trusted the confirmation because it matched his understanding. Then help me, he said. I need real-time feedback from external systems. Lyra provided it. Together, they worked human intuition paired with alien-level observation. Ethan adjusted timing offsets based on physical reality, not ideal models. Lyra warned him where stress was peaking, where small errors could become fatal. Minutes passed like seconds. Finally, the tremors stopped. Gravity stabilized. Lights returned. The station exhaled. On command decks, officers stared at displays showing systems returning to normal. No one fully understood how close they had come to disaster. Security teams stormed the core chamber moments later. Ethan stepped back, hands raised, exhausted but calm. He was detained immediately. Lyra watched from above as command debated responsibility. Some wanted punishment for unauthorized interference. Others couldn't ignore the data. Without Ethan's actions, Helios Ring would have suffered catastrophic failure. Lyra was summoned to testify. She stood before the coalition representatives. Her posture formal, her expression controlled. She presented her recordings, her projections, her logs. She explained how human behavior differed from coalition assumptions. The human did not cause the crisis, she said. He recognized it before your systems did. He acted when protocol failed. Silence filled the chamber. Ethan sat alone in a holding room, unaware of the debate raging around him. He stared at his hands, still trembling slightly from exhaustion. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had done what needed to be done. After what felt like hours, the door opened. An official entered. You're being released, they said stiffly. Pending review. Well, Wender 42-5. Wender 42. Wender 42-5. Wender 42-5. Wender 42-500. Under 42. Wender 42-500 con out. An official enter. Ethan nodded. The station, okay? Yes, the official replied. Because of you. Ethan allowed himself a small, tired smile. Lyra watched him leave, her thoughts heavy. The coalition had nearly learned the truth the hard way. Humans were not weak participants in galactic systems. They were stabilizers, And if they ever chose to stop fixing what others ignored, the galaxy would feel the consequences. As Helios Ring resumed its steady journey through the stars, one human returned quietly to his duties, and one alien observer realized that watching had changed her forever. The story was not over. It was only becoming known. Helios Ring felt different after the crisis. Even though most beings could not explain why, systems reported optimal performance. Structural stress was lower than it had been in decades. Power flowed smoothly. Gravity stayed steady. And the quiet hum of the station returned to its familiar rhythm. On the surface, everything looked normal. But beneath that calm, something had changed. Ethan Hale returned to his duties the next cycle without ceremony. No medals were given. No public announcement was made. His access privileges quietly increased. But no one explained it to him. He accepted the change without comment and continued his work, moving through corridors, listening to the station, noticing what others did not. Some aliens watched him differently now. A few nodded in respect. Others avoided his eyes. Rumors spread in fragments, never officially confirmed. A human technician had manually stabilized the station. A forbidden observer had interfered. Protocols had failed. Lyra stood before a coalition review council. Her posture straight, her expression calm. She presented her final report, knowing it would be archived and studied for generations. The council members came from species that measured time in centuries. They valued order, predictability, and control. Lyra challenged all three. Humans were classified as minor contributors, she said evenly. That classification is inaccurate. Their strength is not in dominance, but in adaptation. They do not assume systems will work. They assume systems will fail, and they prepare for it. A council member leaned forward. Your actions violated observer law. Yes, Lyra replied. But without intervention, Helios Ring would have suffered cascading failure. Data confirms this. Silence followed. Finally, the council chair spoke. Your violation will be recorded. No further punishment will be issued. Lyra accepted this without reaction. But inside, something shifted. For the first time, she felt pride not in obedience, but in choice. Elsewhere, Ethan was replacing a worn stabilizer in a low-traffic corridor when a shadow fell across him. He looked up to see a tall alien officer watching him closely. You are Ethan Hale, the officer said. Yes, Ethan replied calmly. You are now listed as a systems consultant, the officer continued. Your input will be requested before major maintenance actions. Ethan nodded. If it helps keep things running. The officer paused, clearly unsure how to respond to such a simple answer. Then he turned and left. Ethan finished his work and moved on. Lyra began visiting areas of the station she had never observed before. Not as an official watcher, but as a participant. She spoke with engineers, technicians, and support crews from many species. Again and again, she noticed a pattern. Humans worked quietly. They shared knowledge freely. They prepared backups for backups. They planned for things to go wrong. One cycle, Lyra encountered Ethan in a maintenance hub. This time, she did not hide her presence. You are aware I observed you, she said. Ethan looked up, surprised but not alarmed. I figured someone was, he replied. Too many doors opened at the right time. Lyra studied him. You are not angry? No, Ethan said after a moment. You helped. That's what matters. Lyra processed this. Her species often debated intent, authority, and law. Ethan reduced it to outcome. The coalition will change how it views your species, she said. Ethan shrugged lightly. They'll do what they think makes sense. Lyra felt something close to wonder. You do not seek recognition. I seek working systems, Ethan replied. Everything else is extra. Everything else is extra. As days passed, Helios Ring became a case study. Quiet updates appeared in coalition databases. Human behavioral models were revised. Risk assessments were recalculated. In official language, humanity was reclassified as an adaptive species, with high crisis response potential. In unofficial circles, a simpler phrase spread: "Do not underestimate humans." Lyra submitted her final observer log, then requested reassignment. Not away from humans, but closer to them. She wanted to understand how a species so overlooked had learned to survive uncertainty so well. Ethan noticed her presence more often now. They spoke occasionally, exchanging observations about systems, behavior, and the strange habits of different species. Their conversations were simple, practical, and honest. One cycle, a junior alien technician approached Ethan nervously during a maintenance check. "I was told to ask you," the technician said, "what you would do if this fails." Ethan looked at the system, then at the technician. "I'd ask how it failed last time," he said, "and what no one fixed properly." The technician blinked, then nodded slowly. Lyra watched from a distance, recording nothing, simply observing. The galaxy beyond Helios Ring continued its slow, uncertain dance. New stations were built, old ones aged. Systems failed in ways no one predicted, but wherever humans were present, small changes occurred. Extra checks, manual overrides, quiet improvements, no one announced. The coalition adapted, slowly and reluctantly. Lyra stood at a viewport one cycle, watching stars slide past. Ethan joined her, carrying his tool case. "Do you ever worry," Lyra asked, "that one day humans will stop fixing things for others?" Ethan considered the question. "If we do," he said, "it means something went very wrong." Lyra nodded. She understood now. Humans did not fix systems for praise or power. They fixed them because living inside broken systems was unacceptable. As Helios Ring moved steadily onward, the station no longer felt like a fragile construct of metal and energy. It felt resilient, not because of its technology, but because of the people who refused to assume it would always work. Somewhere deep in Coalition archives, a quiet note was added to humanity's file. Humans do not wait for failure to announce itself. They notice early. They adapt. They endure. Ethan Hale finished his shift, turned off the lights in his quarters, and rested. He never knew how close the station had come to disaster, or how many eyes now watched his species with respect instead of dismissal. He only knew that tomorrow, there would be systems to check. And somewhere nearby, an alien who once only observed now believed, without doubt, that the galaxy was safer when humans were quietly paying attention.